Yeah, I'll react to that, sure.
End up in back to
Hold on. Is this the one where it was like the fake the fake like the like Prussia was coming up and they wanted to succeed Austria as the dominant power in kind of the Germanic Europe. And then the Austrians fought with the Prussians, and they both obviously defeated the powers in Denmark. And then they split up stuff, and then Prussia started some beef with Austria in the taken territory to lure them into a bigger war, the Austro-Prussian War, where Prussia defeated them easily. Am I thinking of the correct thing? I don't know. Let's go. Original link to the video, top of the description. My name's Connor. If you're new, hello. Discord, also link below that. Would love to have you. Makes it easier for me to interact with you. See your recommendations. Up to you. Let us go. Hit all the buttons. Dano-Prussian War.
Despite the long-forgotten nature and complexity of the matter,
Phones away.
let's try to understand what exactly caused the great powers of Denmark and Prussia to end up in back-to-back wars against one another.
If you're not ready to learn, all right, phones away, everyone. Toss it. If you're not ready to learn, home ec is down the hall. You're in the wrong class. Or sit in the back.
First, we need to try to understand the root of it all.
Schleswig-Holstein?
The Schleswig-Holstein question. This was a diplomatic dispute between the powers of the Kingdom of Denmark and the contemporary German Confederation, relating to the duchies of Schleswig and Holstein. Over the years, the Duchy of Schleswig had long been a part of Denmark or under its crown in one way or another. Meanwhile, the Duchy of Holstein had been a part of the puzzle-pieced Holy Roman Empire for a good while. Nonetheless, beginning in 1460, both duchies were under the command of the same duke, who just so happens to be the King of Denmark, thanks to the Treaty of Rhode. One particular chunk of this treaty would later haunt the Danes, though, and this was a line that implied, under German interpretation, that from that point on, the two duchies must remain forever undivided. This heavily controversial interpretation would start to become significant after the dissolution of the Holy Roman Empire and the formation of the German Confederation, which included the territory of Holstein. By this point, much of Holstein and Schleswig had become ethnically German. So when King Frederick VII of Denmark announced to the people of Schleswig that the duchy was to become even more closely tied to his kingdom, many of its citizens rebelled. Numerous of these people, who were ethnic Germans, wanted to see both duchies pushed further away from Denmark and closer to the German Confederation instead. The political systems within the Kingdom of Denmark and the Schleswig and Holstein duchies appeared to differ notably, and many Danes were concerned by Holstein's membership in the German Confederation and its potential interference in Danish affairs. Additionally, there were growing ethnic and linguistic divides throughout the duchies, which were only accentuated by the growing nationalism on both sides. As tensions and dissatisfaction grew, the newfound Schleswig-Holstein question eventually led to the first round of full-blown military conflict. The first straw appears to have been when King Frederick in 1848 was asked to recognize the joint Schleswig-Holstein state that had been described in the earlier treaty, and he ultimately declined to do so. His reasoning was that even though he recognized the right of Holstein to exist within the German Confederation, he far from wanted to see the same thing happen to Schleswig, which prompted him to state that he simply lacks the power, the right, or the wish to see Schleswig unite with Holstein as a German state. This was not taken well nor lightly by those who had made the request. A rebellion then followed, as the defiant citizens of Schleswig and Holstein were able to win over support from the troops of the Rendsburg fortress after marching there with their own growing militia. While some Danish troops at the fortress refused to join the cause, they made a deal to return to Denmark and refrain from joining the counteroffensive. Although there was not much of a way for the Schleswig-Holstein rebels to really enforce this. Regardless, the rebels marched next to the city of Flensborg, which they swiftly occupied. While this success came early, it was short-lived, and the Schleswig-Holsteiners were soon chased out by the responding Danish troops, who came out victorious at the Battle of Bov less than 2 weeks after the initial occupation.
So it's cool because I just remember learning about the Prussian as the Schleswig-Holstein issue as a precursor to fighting between the Austrians and Prussians, and I never learned anything else other than that, you know. And this is going into the more specifics of what was happening inside Denmark. So interesting.
Still, the Germans were unwilling to see their friends fail, and Prussian troops were quickly sent in to support the rebels. The Battle of Schleswig on April 23rd, a couple of weeks following the Battle of Bov, resulted in a Prussian triumph. A series of successes followed for the Germans, but the Danes eventually turned the tide by the Battle of Sundeved in May, and seems to have regained the upper hand from that point on. Now, with defeat after defeat and complete opposition from the rest of Europe, the Germans were forced to consider negotiation. The Danes, contrarily, rejected the demands made by the opposing belligerent and broke off diplomacy before an agreement could be made. Eventually, with building pressure from the surrounding European powers, the Armistice of Malmö was signed between Russia and Denmark and almost entirely accommodated Denmark's demands alone.
Am I thinking of something else completely? I thought Austria was involved here.
This treaty was then ratified at Frankfurt and put a temporary pause on the war. The following year, the London Conference was convened in hopes of resolving the root of the conflict, but negotiations broke down despite British, Russian, and German agreements on the core matters. Denmark proved difficult to agree with once again, and the war was renewed a few months later in the spring of 1849. After a series of battles and many Danish victories, another truce was signed, but still...
1848 was a big year for all of Europe, right?
Battles and many Danish victories, another truce was signed, but still no answer to the looming question. Finally, in May of 1852, the London Protocol was signed and approved by surrounding European powers and declared that the duchies would remain independent, though still in personal union with the Crown of Denmark. While this technically should have answered the ultimate question, for the Germans it didn't. Still displeased with the connection of the duchies to the Danish kingdom, and now the attempted changes made to the succession of the thrones within the kingdom and duchies, the Germans in and outside of Schleswig and Holstein remained ready to fight once again.
That's unnerving, because that seemed like a pretty fair deal that didn't really make either side completely happy. But at this time, I just see the Prussians as super ambitious for becoming the undisputable power in the Germanic lands, and so it doesn't matter if anything's fair or not here. You want to get your way. So
the interwar period was depressingly short-lived, thanks to the unilateral resolution of the root of the conflict. The diplomatic portion of the dispute had continued, and after the death of King Frederick VII in Denmark, his successor attempted to enact new policies in violation of the London Protocol and in direct opposition to German views on the matter.
Well, that's good news for Prussia then, right?
By February 1st, 1864, the Second Schleswig War broke out when united Prussian and Austrian troops
There we go. This is what I'm thinking of.
entered the Schleswig Duchy in response to the enactment of the November Constitution of 1863.
You guys know what I mean, like by like Prussian? Like I feel like Prussia right now is this guy, you know? Not to say it's a bad thing. I mean, you want to become more, you want to become the dominant power, right? That's what every country tries to do, really. But I just see them as like all of this is just one little domino for their major plan to just squash Austria. Not squash
This
them, but
conflict
have
played
them
out much like the previous
the clear, not dominant power.
of 1863. This conflict played out much like the previous one and due to the same unsolved question, but finally came to a close in October of 1864 with the signing of the Treaty of Vienna. This time, with the Austrian Empire,
American
the
Civil
Kingdom
War
of
is going
Prussia, and the Kingdom of Denmark all being involved, the Schleswig...
I gotta shut up. Jesus Christ, I keep... By the way, if I'm saying anything wrong, good possibility, please correct me, guys.
Prussia and the Kingdom of Denmark all being involved, the Schleswig-Holstein question was finally resolved. At least, the best that it could be. Denmark was now forced to cede the Duchy of Schleswig, all but for one small section, the Duchy of Holstein and the Duchy of Lauenburg, to Prussia and Austria. A later treaty would be signed between the latter two, which would grant Schleswig and Lauenburg to Prussia, while Austria took Holstein. This would not be the end of the newfound question between Prussia and Austria, though, and would eventually lead to the Austro-Prussian War.
Oh.
But finally, the
What just happened?
original
Otto, you dog. What is Otto von Bismarck doing right now? Is he... I forget how long he's in power. I know he's really in power during the Franco-Prussian War. But this all just seems like a 30-year-long effort to create a unified Germany with Prussia as its leader, you know? And it seems it works. Just the statesmanship, like political intelligence, I guess, is just off the charts for Prussia, it seems, in that, deal with this, and then you deal with Austria, and then you get to deal with France, and then you get to deal with France in a way that unifies Germany around you to protect against France. It's just masterclass.
Schleswig-Holstein question had been answered. As for the Danes living within the duchies, who had long been Danish nationals, a 6-year period was granted for those who wished to leave the duchies and return to Denmark, as opposed to staying within the boundaries
in the
of either
1800s
Prussia or Austria.
Beautiful.
Their neighboring Germans within the duchies, of course, duchies and return to Denmark, as opposed to staying within the boundaries of either Prussia or Austria. Their neighboring Germans within the duchies, of course, were contrarily satisfied with their current situation. So, to summarize, the Dano-Prussian War, or more accurately, the Dano-Prussian conflict, was not one simple battle or series of battles. Instead, it was a range of diplomatic discord and full-blown back-to-back wars, all rooted in one thing: the Schleswig-Holstein question. The question in all its complexity seems to come down to the simple dispute over how both duchies, either united or divided, should be governed and by whom. While the friction remained mostly between the German Confederation and the Kingdom of Denmark,
Austria,
Great Britain, Russia, Sweden, and other neighboring empires and kingdoms were dragged in throughout the conflict due to its effect on the surrounding European community. Still, from what we can understand, although Lord Palmerston believes that none of us could quite understand the whole thing, the big question truly involved only the duchies of Schleswig and Holstein, and the Kingdom of Denmark in opposition to the German Confederation. Everything and everyone else that was involved at one point or another appears to be collateral damage, which is to be expected considering the decades of diplomatic conflict turned military warfare in multiple bouts. In the end, the Germans seemed to have triumphed over their Danish adversaries, but ultimately, the Dano-Prussian conflict was not nearly so simple. And if we should believe Palmerston, there remains no one left to tell the tale in its entirety.
A really good video. I think this is a perfect use of the... Again, guys, let me know if you disagree. Love to hear it. A perfect, you know, like the chess versus checkers thing. It's like, oh, they're playing checkers when they're playing chess. This is, I think, a good example of that. I don't know how much I'm attributing the rise of Germany under Prussia, like the rise of Germany from like Prussian force and Prussian political maneuvering. I'm not sure if maybe I'm giving too much credit to political masterminds making everything go, and maybe it's more of a natural thing that eventually Prussia catches on and uses as momentum to secure a united Germany. But it really seems like all of these are just countries playing checkers, like, oh, there's this conflict over here, let's win, when Prussia is playing chess, and it's like, yeah, this conflict, it's just one move and a series of other things to take control. I'm not confident enough to say that's definitely what happened, but it feels like it. So, awesome video. Love y'all. Hope you're all doing well. Hope you learned something or can teach me something in the comments or any comments at all down there. Would love to see it. Hopefully you like and subscribe, and I will see you guys next video. Bye.